Hey guys, Maven here. Just like in any business, skill, hard work, and dedication are hallmarks for finding success in the WWE. But sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. So in this video, we're going to be talking all about backstage politics and how it could help or hurt a promising career in the WWE. Now, before we begin, I have to describe what I mean by backstage politics. And again, this is my experience. Once you get into the WWE, like every other job, you're going to have your own group of friends, your own people that you run with, the people that you're most comfortable with. Dare I say, your own clique. Sometimes this group of friends can be viewed from the office as either helping or hurting someone's career. Now, this can come in two forms. Perhaps a friend could be indirectly hurting your career, or they could be outright sabotaging it altogether. Something I actually have experience with. And I'll dive in later about how I feel backstage politics perhaps could have swayed the arc of my career. But first, let's talk about how a friend, a riding mate, a buddy might indirectly hurt your career. Now, how this might play out in real life, well, I gotta lean on numero uno as my #1 example. Obviously, once I had been in WWE a few years, I started riding with Randy Orton. The way Randy and I ended up in a car together was when they split the shows. I was originally on SmackDown, he was on Raw, and once they had the draft, split the shows, and the rosters went in two different directions, I found myself on Raw without a riding partner, and Randy was quick to come to my aid. Now, we all know in 2024 what Randy Orton has become, but if you can go back 20-some years and think of a younger, slightly less accomplished legend killer, they knew immediately that they were going to strap a rocket onto his ass and shoot him directly to the moon. And don't get me wrong, he had everything that it took. So if you have a star, what's the one thing the higher-ups are going to want that star to avoid? Well, that's them getting in their own way, being their own worst enemy. And the easiest way to self-sabotage is running with the wrong crowd. And I've heard it before that if you look at someone's crowd, you can see their future. Well, the WWE knew this, and I hate to admit it, but they probably viewed me as not as serious about the wrestling business as I needed to be at the time. In previous videos, I've talked all about some of my regrets, and obvious one of my regrets is that I cared more about what wrestling could give me than what I could give the wrestling business. Well, knowing this, they wanted Randy to surround himself by people that could only elevate his career, not people that would hold him back. And hey, I gotta own it. I'm afraid at the time they probably saw me as potentially holding back Randy's career. But how does that play in backstage politics? Well, we're jumping ahead. I told you. I'll get to that later in the video. Now, examples of people, in my view, had their career altered by backstage politics, I'll give you two. And again, guys, disclaimer, this is my opinion. I've obviously went into this guy I've done a whole video on him, but Test is one. And look at the video I did on Test, because I talk all about how I think his career could have been up here and it was down here in some aspects. And a lot of that had to do with how he was viewed and who he was friends with backstage. But the other one that I think, my #2 on the list, might shock you, but I view Scott Steiner as someone who had backstage politics affect his run. And now, bear with me for a second. By the time Scott got to the WWE, the prime of his career was in the rear view, obviously. And for anyone who only knows Scott's career from the 2003 era, oh no, go back and look at those old WCW videos of him and his brother in his prime. I don't think there was anyone more athletic. I don't think there was anyone more aggressive. And there was very few people who could have a better wrestling match than Scott in his prime. But by the time he got to the WWE, there were people that, let's just say, weren't in his corner. And Scott sabotaged a lot of his own career because Scott was not going to take anything lying down. If he didn't like something about his character direction, if he didn't like something about a match, Scott was not the guy who wasn't gonna speak up. So perhaps his own attitude helps play into this, but Scott had his fair share of enemies backstage that were not trying to help boost his career. In fact, if you ask my opinion, I think they were trying to bring it to a halt altogether. Now, we've talked about how backstage politics can negatively affect a career, but there's a flip side to that coin, and for that, I give you Shelton Benjamin. Now, wait, before you start, oh, Maven, you think Shelton got what he got because of politics? Not at all. I've never met anybody more athletic than Shelton. I've never met a better guy, someone who is just smiling all the times. But I do know that the WWE always knew whenever they gave Shelton a belt, whether it be a tag title or during his singles run as the IC champion, or later after they released him, he was easy to bring back. And part of the reason is because I never met anybody that disliked Shelton. I never met anybody that didn't respect Shelton. I have never met one person that has one negative thing to say about Shelton Benjamin. When you're liked by everyone, even the office, makes it easy for promotion to happen. Again, I'm not saying that's what helped give Shelton the push he deserved, but I'm also not saying it hurt him. Another example of someone who backstage politics has helped, R-Truth. Now, I worked with him during my time on the Indies after my release, and there's nobody that you're gonna be in a locker room that's gonna make you laugh more. And this carried over to when he was rehired by the WWE in 2008. And you look, this many years later, he is still there, and I dare you, try to find one negative comment about him. He's another one that is gonna make you smile, that's gonna brighten your day, simply being around. Has he been a main event talent? No. Has he been the guy who is head of the marquee? Never. But he has firmly established himself a career and a solid reputation as that go-to guy, as that person you can lean on, whether it be for a good wrestling match or for comic relief during a show. That comes from being well-liked backstage. Now, another individual that I know personally had his career affected by backstage politics was Alex Riley. Now, I know what you're saying, Maven. Alex Riley wasn't during your era. True enough, but I know Kevin. I know him from my time in Florida. We spent some time together once his WWE career had come to an end. And I know the stories that he told me. Backstage politics definitely affected him and affected him negatively. Now, how could someone more directly hurt or even sabotage your career, even if they're a friend? And I'm giving only hypotheticals here, so don't read into it too damn much. But the one thing I do know, egos matter. And when you get to the level of professional wrestler in the WWE, we all care about our placement. We all care about how many fans are coming up to us after the show. We all care about how big our pop is. We all care about our placement on the card. If someone has a higher position on the card than you do, friend or acquaintance, it starts to play with you after a while. And I've actually seen it where people sabotage. Maybe they put little stories out, true or untrue, really doesn't matter. Their whole goal is to knock that person down a peg or two. And I'm not saying it's only like this in the WWE. We all know it's like that in the real world as well. All I'm saying, it exists in the WWE just as much. Now, as I stated earlier in the video, I have reason to believe backstage politics might have played a role in my development. Now, believe me, I have stated before, and I believe wholeheartedly, I was the reason I didn't elevate beyond a mid-carder, but I did get positive feedback from someone I trust implicitly, who worked in the office, who worked backstage, who was at every Raw, every SmackDown, every pay-per-view event, who was in those backstage meetings, who told me, actually quite recently told me, that every time my name would be mentioned, there was something pushing it back down, restricting my rise in the WWE. Do I think that's the reason? Absolutely not. I own my own baggage, as I've said before. I know the work I didn't put in, but it was interesting to find out that while I had a lot of people in my corner helping me, trying to make me better, I still had a select few that for whatever reason just were never going to be a fan. All that said, backstage politics was not the reason I was let go. So to find out the real reason and hear all about the day I got fired, click the link on screen.